I want to talk about a disorder that's both simple, profound, and crucial to understand. I want to teach you how to, so to speak, avoid or remediate that disorder. And in doing so, I hope that you'll walk home with something that's profoundly compelling and helpful to all the children in your family, to everybody, so that everyone will get some sort of benefit from this, all of us. The disorder is what's called, in global terms, attachment disorder. I want to talk to you about attachment disorder. So attachment disorder is a fascinating global disorder. By the way, this would be a good time just to check once again that all the phones are off, including vibrate. Everything's off, thank you. So what is attachment disorder? So I could give a whole lecture. Actually, I'm not the best person to give a lecture on this. Maybe I'm probably one of the worst people to give a lecture on this, but at least I understand the concepts. And I'll share with you the basic Rashi Prakim of attachment disorder. Attachment disorder, or problems of attachment, are referred to as problems that children have in their early childhood, where they don't bond successfully, correctly with their parents. They don't feel attached to their parents properly. Where for reasons let's get outside any concept of blame, but let's just talk facts instead, and everyone can take their own out of this. Attachment disorder has a profound impact for those people who have issues of attachment. Because life, as we live it, we, human beings, we're social creatures. We live in a context where we have relationships. And within the context of those relationships, that's where we flourish. That's where we become fulfilled. And without that, we end up living in a world of almost like psychotic loneliness, where actually the psychotic can live much more happily alone because they create their own world of attachments and people and an environment to live in. For the rest of us healthy people, we need relationships to thrive. And unless we have meaningful relationships, we don't thrive. As I've said many times, one way of looking at happiness is that happiness is the product of long-term meaningful relationships. It creates an internal sense of happiness. I feel happy, I feel gesund. A person who can walk into a room and feel connected or able to connect, rather than walk into a room and feel terribly insecure and uncomfortable because I don't know where to sit. You come to a Shabbos and you're not sure where to place yourself. That's a problem of attachment. Whereas others seem comfortable to walk into a room and just greet and meet and sit, who are considered to have healthy attachments. Having healthy attachments is actually probably the foundation for having a healthy and productive life. If you can have healthy attachments. And you learn those healthy attachments from home, from your parents. And if you're fortunate enough, you grow up in an environment where those healthy attachments are passed on to you. One of the observations I've seen, working as I do, and have done for 30 years in the Olam HaTorah, in the frum world, is the impact of the Holocaust on damaging attachments, on creating attachment disorder. How many of the survivors survived, but they survived without the ability to have healthy attachments. They didn't have them, it was taken from them. They never had healthy attachments because of the war and what they went through. And Mamela, they never were able to pass on healthy attachments as well as they could have or should have had they not gone through the war to their own children. And I'm seeing, at least in my work, third and fourth generation of children struggling with attachment that goes right back to the Holocaust. That goes right back to the war. Healthy attachments are crucial because they give us the ability to be resilient. Resilience means you go through or can go through trauma, crisis, pain and struggle and bounce back. Everyone has the kasha. Oh, you say it's sexual abuse. I know someone. It's usually themselves, by the way. They just don't want to say it. I know someone who was abused and they didn't go off the derech and they live a productive life. And it's a fact. You cannot possibly say that every single person who was ever sexually abused went off the derech. It's not true. Actually, those who were abused and didn't go off may need to thank the Rabbi Shalom and their parents, could be, because they had healthy attachments growing up. And when you have healthy attachments, it gives you the kaiches, the ability to negotiate and navigate life with all its ups and downs. And that's the world the Rabbi Shalom was meant to give. That's what he gave us. He gave us a world called Olam HaNisyonos, Olam HaNisyonos, the Mesilas Yesharim says. Olam HaTlaz, a world of crises and struggles. And when you have healthy attachments to begin with, when you feel connected in the right way to your parents and your family, so you're given the wherewithal through those healthy attachments for how to go through the struggles of life, even trauma, and even if you take a dip, which is natural, through the trauma, but you bounce back. You bounce back because there's something given to you that's in you that makes you survive. This is what we have to convey to all our children. We're busy worrying about these pratim of how the child in crisis is going to affect the other siblings. And so we're busy trying to protect them and they shouldn't talk to each other and we send this one on vacation and this one. We're doing all these interventions. And actually, most of it fails. Most of it fails. And in fact, we can damage healthy children, so to speak, more by all these interventions of trying to save them, because we end up making them feel insecure. We end up making them feel, I'm terrified of you and for you. I'm terrified every second you're going to go off the derech too. And in doing so, I destroy the underlying concepts of good attachments instead of building it. Your terror and fear, which is understandable, we're parents, and we don't want to see our other kids hurt, or this one in crisis worse. And that terror and fear actually undermines having good attachments. Poor attachments can happen in a heartbeat. We don't even realize. I'll give you a mashal. Just a mashal so you understand. A couple have a baby. They have a little boy. And they're a couple of days before the bris. Mother is nursing. It's not going well. The baby's colicky. And just at this time, unfortunately, the father has lost his job. There is no parnasa. Running around trying to raise money. Bills are flying in every direction. And as he comes into the bedroom to discuss with his wife, how on earth are we going to make a bris? We've got no money. How are we going to do this? It's embarrassing. What are we going to do? he notices out the bedroom window his car being towed. You got the picture? Now, there is no model, as I will show you shortly, of greater healthy attachments than a nursing mother with her child. There is no model of a healthy, you'll see soon. That is the healthiest model of secure attachments. That's the best. That's what we try to emulate the rest of our lives, that experience for the child. So here the child is, in the embrace of his mother, being nursed in the security and comfort that provides, while the father comes in and has a meltdown, watching the car being towed, frustrated about his whole life situation, throwing the bills on the bed, and basically having a mini panic attack about the sorrows that they're in, and this bris that he has no clue how they're going to be able to afford, etc., etc., etc. The mother understandably resonates to his deep anxiety and pain and tightens up. She feels threatened. She feels his anxiety. And the child who's being nursed converts the experience of utter cat's whiskers, of the experience that you cannot package a better experience than being nursed as a child. That's it. That's life is downhill from then. Let's face it. Right? Nothing will ever be that good again. Right? And in that moment, his parents are both having panic attacks, not blaming anyone, I'm just describing the Matthias. They're falling apart, there's angry words, there's sounds of nervousness and anger that is now permanently connected in the baby's psyche, primitive developing psyche, with sustenance, with nurture, with touch, with being cared for. It's now merged together into one, where the experience is one that's potentially frightening. And so later in life, a person has struggles with intimacy and has no clue why, or where it came from, or why this connectedness, this feeling of connectedness is terrifying. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. My expectation is that any moment now, this wonderful experience is going to be ripped from me, and I have no idea why, and never will. I'm trying to bring you into the world of how ignorant we are about these sugyas. We think we know, and how little we really know. And then I get the Rabbi years later with that little boy who calls in the parents and then calls me in extremely angry about, I've gone out of my way for this kid more than anyone. And every time I get close to him, he runs away. There's something wrong with your kid. And everyone's clueless. I have no idea what you're talking about. And meanwhile, deep in his unconscious, primitive developmental psyche, in his brain patterns, is a relationship between intimacy or closeness or caring and fear and anxiety. Take that model and just multiply it by hundreds of thousands of scenarios, and then ask ourselves, do we really understand our kids? Do we really have a right to criticize them? Do we really have any havamina of why they do what they do, when and how? Do we really think their behavior is intended? It's reactive. It's a deep program inside them of fear and shame and a relationship to stuff that is pre-conscious. Pre-conscious. It took me years in the sugya of sexual abuse till I discovered a prat a detail that Pasha blew me away. The issue about the babysitters. I don't know if Avi ever shared that piece with you. One of the children I was working with, a young lady who was off the derech, and I discovered that about a third of these struggling sexual abuse victims get worse in therapy, not better. And I called my colleagues, lots of them, and I asked, tell me, be honest, this is happening to me, is it happening to you? Could you look at your records? And we started looking at our records and discovering that, you know what? It is about that. And about a third of the kids, the abuse victims, you send them to therapy, they get worse. Well, why is that? Are we that bad at what we do? Like, what makes that happen? And I had no clue, but I realized it was true, and I kept my eyes and ears open for ideas and thoughts. One day I was doing a group with a bunch of girls, and one of them was exceedingly nasty towards me. Exceedingly nasty. Rude, cursing me, all sorts of stuff. And I asked her, respectfully, permission to challenge her. Could I challenge you? You can if you want. I said, no, I'm being honest. I want to know if you want. Will you allow me to challenge you? Can I push you? It's not going to be pleasant, but can I push you? Because something's going wrong in this therapy. Do you mind if I push you? Because I think there's something we don't know. And she said yes. I moved my chair very close to her, respectful but close, and I started pushing her buttons. Halfway through, this young lady got up, ran out screaming out of the office, out of the building. I was with a co-therapist. I asked the other therapist to stay with the other girls, and I ran after her into the street, behind the building, and found her behind a bush, crying hysterically and screaming. And basically screaming, you're going to kill me, everyone's going to kill me, I'm going to kill myself, I'm done. And I conducted a session with her from the other side of the bush to this screaming, pained young lady, where she finally told me what it was all about. And she said, you keep using the wrong language. All the treatment we were trained in was a treatment about villains and victims. About villains and victims. And we would always try to tell the kids, you're the victim. You're not a villain, you're a victim. This happened to you. And we totally forgot that about a third of them were repeating. And in her case, we're using little babies that they babysat for their own pleasure, to pleasure themselves with the private parts of little babies. For me, aside from helping her, changing the language, and we did help her, and she was able to heal, but the penny dropped to something I found so astonishing, and it ties into this attachment disorder issue. Because what I realized was the number of little kids who absolutely swear up and down, I was never molested, don't talk about it, I don't want to hear about it. Now, for most of the kids who say that, they're just too embarrassed. Or they've repeated, so they can't talk about it. Till they're in a framework where it's safe to talk about it. Because they've not only been molested, they've molested. So how can they talk about it? So they deny the whole sugya. But then I realized there's loads of them out there who simply have no memory. There is no memory of it. And suddenly the penny dropped. And I started digging and doing some research with Rishus. And discovered that yes, indeed, it turned out that these kids had been molested as babies by babysitters. Kids who were available to babysit. At one point, I recommended never having a child in crisis babysit alone. Always have two. Just never let one do it alone. Because I found out it was quite prevalent. Once I knew, I was able to ask. Once they realized I wasn't trying to hurt, but I was trying to heal, the kids started telling me. So from early on, they're already detached. Because imagine a kid who grows up experiencing, relating to themselves somehow sexually. How do they exactly go through our system and survive? How on earth could they possibly go through our system? Either a boy with the issues of Shmiras Haguf and Shmiras Einayim, or a girl with the issues of tznius, every second tznius, when she or he are already interested in themselves sexually at age 5. So they detach. They detach from us. They detach early on because unconsciously they're already aware or feel, based on the culture of this world that I'm growing up in, I don't belong here. And that's pre-conscious. That's pre-conscious. They're not aware of that. It's just how they feel. And we dare come along and blame and judge and criticize and punish these poor children. How dare we? These are issues of attachment, Rabbi say. And I want to break down attachment for you so everyone goes home crystal clear about attachment. So you can take these ideas and concepts to your struggling children, to your non-struggling children, non-presently struggling NPSCs, non-presently struggling children. But you can have a framework for how to run your home, how to relate to your children, all of them. Because I contend that if we can presume that the underlying reason that some children get affected by different types of trauma and others don't, if the underlying reason is actually poor attachments, and we can strengthen those attachments, then what we're doing is healing. We're setting the framework, we're setting the picture for healing to occur and for protection and strengthening and creating resilience in all our other children. Do you see that? Attachment is crucial. Children with poor attachments are the ones who are going to have the PTSD attacks, the post-traumatic stress disorder attacks that completely dysfunction them and throw them off. See, in the language of, you all know PTSD, right? The result of trauma, of sexual trauma, or any form of trauma, is post-traumatic stress disorder. Listen to the language in the book. In the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, says the following. The person suffering with PTSD, think about your struggling kids. As I say these words, I'll say it slowly, I'll repeat it because it's too much once. The child with PTSD will have a severe psychological reaction at exposure to internal or external features or events, it's not the right word, I forget it, that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the original trauma. That's a mouthful, I know. They will have a severe psychological reaction at exposure to internal or external cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the original trauma. Why? Why is that? Why do they have that reaction? So there's a little part in the brain called the amygdala. It's a little tiny part in the brain. And one of the functions of the amygdala that's so crucial is self-preservation. It's there to protect us. And the amygdala is like a scanner. It's like a hyperbolic, a bowl, a scanning machine, the best one in the world. And it scans all the time, everything and everyone, scanning for potential threats. It's always doing this. Now, if someone's not gone through trauma, and they've had healthy attachments as a child with their parents, then their list of traumatic events that the amygdala is looking for are extremely limited. Actually, the amygdala may not even know what it's looking for. It may be looking for something so rare and extreme because this person grew up with such healthy attachments, so free of trauma, that the amygdala is scanning for stuff that's so unlikely. So this kid lives a healthy life. They're able to attach, they're able to connect, they're able to get over problems. They do not view insults or threats as cues that symbolize or resemble an aspect of the original trauma because they didn't have one. Masha'en Kain, a trauma victim, they do. For them, the amygdala is scanning for every event, internal or external, that could symbolize or resemble an aspect of the original trauma. I had a kid walked into my office once, years ago. This was my first years of practice. And the boys, not the girls obviously, but the boys who came in, when they left, sometimes I would give them like a pat on the shoulder. You did well today. Obviously, no one does that anymore. But I did. One day, I gave this kid a pat on his shoulder. My hand never reached him because he ducked away from it, ran out, and didn't come the next 2 weeks for his session. I called the school, I called the parents, we couldn't understand it. I called my supervisor, who did understand it. And lo and behold, I had no idea at all. I was dealing with a molestation victim. So the hand touching his shoulder, can you see, would be a cue, both internal and external, that symbolizes and resembles an aspect of the original trauma of being touched without rishus. And he freaked out. He had a PTSD. He acted the way he's meant to. His amygdala was scanning me the whole time. The girls, the victims who sit in my office, one time I did a session with a young lady on a merpeset in Israel. And she wanted to be outside, not inside. And I had my sunglasses on. And she was very shut down. After a while, she cursed me out and let me know she's not continuing unless I remove those sunglasses. And then I realized why. She wanted to see where my eyes were looking. She wanted to see. And she couldn't see. So she was having a PTSD attack right there and then. We have to understand attachment, I believe, is the foundation issue behind all of this. If we can develop healthy attachment, we must develop healthy attachments. There's no if here. Because, whereas we want to be successful, we must develop healthy attachments. And if you look at all the lamdas, I think that Avi for sure has been trying to help and share, it really goes back to this. This is what it's all about. This is the essence and the underlying concept behind it all. Healthy attachments. So how do we do it? How do we develop healthy attachments? So there's a concept I'm going to give you. This is the take-home, in my humble opinion, of all the interesting things I may have to say, I hope, over this weekend. This you take home. This you chazer. This you live with. This is the essence. This is probably, for me at least, I'm sure there are other speakers will have incredibly important things to say. For me, I think this is the most important thing that I'm going to share. I said last night, I shared a thought I've been having a long time. You know, we talk about on the derech and off the derech. We all know this is like very loose and imperfect language. So over the last year or so, I've been developing a better understanding for myself of all the groups, so to speak. Who are they? What are they? I hope to publish an article soon, maybe for Shavuos, on this subject. And in this article, I will describe what I consider to be the 4 groups outside the 5th group who are doing fantastic in our communities. We have a group, I'm willing to say 20% of our kids, 1 in 5, who are doing amazing, boys and girls, who are actually doing outstandingly well. I'm betting you, if I had the money and I did the research, we'd discover they're the ones with good attachments. The circumstances of their lives, whatever they were, led to them having great attachments with their parents. And it's those attachments that allowed them and freed them to do what all kids should be entitled to, which is to steig in our wonderful system. We have wonderful, caring people wanting to help all the kids. And yet only about 20% do this amazing, fantastic result of success in the system. And about 80% don't. But I want to tell you what I see in that 75-80%, so you won't go crazy. There are 4 groups in that, and they all need us to work on attachments. If we work on attachments with them, we will help all these 4 groups steig. I'm not trying to be clever when I say this. I'm trying to be, a little, to give clarity. But these groups I call as follows: ONTDU, on the derech, uninspired. ONTDD, on the derech, disillusioned. OOR, off our derech, still from, and the OTD, off the derech. These 4 groups take up about 75-80% of all the kids who go through our system and matriculate from our system, if they get through at all. We see yeshivas and seminaries around the world where I do workshops in these places, and they complain about the kids. And these are the kids who are either ONTDD or ONTDU. They're either on the derech uninspired. It's like, they do it. Oh, but there's no juice there. There's no battery plugged in. There's just, they do. We all have, everyone's smiling, so you know these kids. We have the ONTDD, the on the derech. They dress the part. They dress the way they're meant to. They basically do what they're meant to do. Oh, but they're so disillusioned. These kids, I give them an example. The boys here they'll miss a Ma'ariv after a chasna. They're not getting out of bed to daven Ma'ariv. They come back Ben Azmanim from yeshiva, and Kriya Shema, Sof Zman Kriya Shema, that's in yeshiva maybe. That certainly doesn't belong Ben Azmanim. I think there's a heter. The girls, the ONTDD will dress the most unsneers as Hilchos Sneers will allow. Whatever's the absolute edge I can push it to, that's where I'm dressing. These are all kids damaged with poor attachments. They don't have attachments to us properly. You try talking to them, you'll soon see you don't have good attachments with them. And then off our derech. They're actually pretty good, some of those kids. They're like at least finding a derech. They're at least trying to find a derech. And off the derech. All these groups, this is about, in my opinion, about 70% of our kids, 75%. They will all change their lives, Rabbi say, if we work on attachments. Mesilas Yesharim, I'm afraid, is not going to reach those kids. Musa is not going to reach them. Angry faces, critical comments, opening up, the Mishnah Brura, you see Sofsman Kriyashma, is not going to help. But attachments, working on attachments, that is going to help. It's going to change them. I'll show you why later on, but I see that I'm so grateful because I see the heads nodding that you're already deherring why. It's Pasha this is going to work. And all the rest is verfallen. It's a waste of time and, in my opinion, destructive and abusive. Because all the rest of the stuff detaches our kids. You yell at a kid who comes home about Sofsman Kriyashma. You disconnected him from Yadus. Yeah, but he's got to know. He's got to know. Does anyone know what that means? He's got to. She has to know. She shouldn't dress like that. She has to know. This is all a build-up to what I want to give you now, the insight of how do we deal with attachment disorder. How do we change and reattach to our kids, all these kids, all of them. So we can create these healthier homes, we can recover from the damage of the war. Truly recover. And I think these kids are taking us to a place where we have no choice but to recover. There is no other option but to recover. Recovering from the war is not building beautiful yeshivas and having elegant bar mitzvahs and fancy chasnas with raised letters on your benches. That's not recovering from the war. We're so, in a sense, we're so proud of ourselves, of our recovery. But forgive me, it's an external recovery. We're yet to see the beginning of the internal recovery from the war. I mentioned yesterday that one young girl, 14-year-old, brilliant, insightful young lady, said to me years ago, I was very, very close with her, and she said to me, I think we're the moral conscience of something that's decayed about Yiddishkeit. I think we're the moral conscience. She was right. I don't think she realized how right she was. And by the way, to put it in context, what's the ultimate attachment disorder? From the Eibishter, where we don't connect with Rabbi Shalom, where we don't govern our lives thinking, was will the Eibishter from mir? The famous Mezeritcher we all talk about, the Siva Shalom brings it down, where he said on the pasuk, on the Mishnah by Hillel, Madasonilach lechavrich lesovid, and Zog the Mezeritcher. He puts the comma in that different place, that beautiful insight. Because how does Madasonilach lechavrich lesovid? How does that answer Kolator Kuloi? That's Ben Odom Makom. Where's Ben Odom Makom? It's only Ben Odom Lechaveira. How's that answer? So the Mezeritcher moves the comma. Madasone loch lechavrech comma lesovid. What's bad? What disconnects you from God? Comma lesovid. Don't do it. Because we have to have attachment to God. We're meant to be connected to Rabbi Shalom. So the ultimate attachment disorder is the one where we detach from Rabbi Shalom. And the ultimate goal of all parenting is to create a metaphor of attachment to a parent. And on the back of that attachment, a child, a healthy one, can grow up and attach to the Av HaRachamon, to Rabbi Shalom. Could there be anything more important than working on healthy attachment? Micro and macro, Proteus and Clolius. The whole life of Yadus is to reconnect. And no, raised lettering on benches has nothing to do with connecting to the Rabbi Shalom. If someone disagrees with me, please come over and prove it to me. And how many types of herring we have at our Kiddush, I'm not sure the Eibishter really cares. Attachment, Rabbi say, what we're going to do in reattaching, which we have to do for these children in crisis, we have no option. There is no option to help them save their lives, but to reattach, to repair the damage. And for all the other groups that I've mentioned, they don't have a chance either unless we reattach. And they're the ones at risk in your home. They're the ones who are at risk from your children in crisis. Because the other group have healthy attachments. And guess what? The healthy attachment kids learn from you as you do this with your children. They become proud of you. They learn love and Torah and Tveikus Bayisbach. They learn the good stuff from you and they grow from that too. And it makes them supercharged with their lives as they see us reconnect with our children, not give up on our children. As Rabbi Yoshev said, if you want to give away any of the kids, give away all the rest of the kids. Just keep the struggling ones. I'm not sure he realized that meant me keeping most of your kids, but there you are. I hope I've made the case for attachment, because now I'm about to tell you how to do it.